Welcome to this video. Today we are going to talk about the Archangel Gabriel. The term Archangel comes from the Greek word or congelos and roughly translates to chief angel or angel who's in charge, while the term Archangel only ever appears a handful of times in the Bible. It's generally understood that there is something of a hierarchy between God's angels and that the archangels sit at the zenith of this system. Archangel Gabriel is therefore a number exception, perhaps one of the most prolific angels in the Bible, given a he has inherited roles from helping the prophet Daniel to interpret his visions, to being the one who foretells the birth of Jesus to the Virgin Mary. Archangel Gabriel also appears across several major religious texts, both canonical and non-canonical, from both Jewish and Islamic traditions, where he adopts similar roles, those that see him often coined as the angel of revelation or an angel messenger, because it is he who commonly is chosen to relate God's messages. Many deem Archangel Gabriel as having infinite power, and he can be in more than one place, helping those that have called upon him or who may need him. He has been attributed with the conception of life pregnancies, childbirth, and the well-being of children. Others see Archangel Gabriel as a muse. He provides motivation and supports for believers to pursue wholesome and creative careers. The strength commonly associated with Archangel Gabriel can also be drawn upon when one feels weakened, as many believe that the archangels shield them from negativity and fuels them of zeal and confidence. Given Archangel Gabriel's role in the Bible terms of delivering messages and interpreting visions, one may see Gabriel as a facilitator of communication, helping the voiceless to be heard and establishing clarity heated conflicts. Traditionally, many see Archangel Gabriel as the defender or guardian angel of Israel. It appears that Gabriel first appears in the Hebrew Bible, his name meaning God is my strength, and serves as an interpreter to the prophet Daniel to help him understand the visions he is seeing. It is understood in the book of Daniel that Daniel is able to receive visions from God, but that these visions are often vague, ambiguous, and sometimes incongruous images that Daniel cannot make sense of by himself. We see this in chapter 2 of the book of Daniel, where King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream and asks the impossible task for the wise men of his kingdom. It's not only interpret the dream, but to tell him what the dream was about, even though he refused to reveal any of the details about said dream. In this time, God shows Daniel the dream while he sleeps, and also gives him the wisdom to understand the nature of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. As a result of this, Daniel becomes one of King Nebuchadnezzar's closest advisors, and we see him interpret other dreams for the king in chapter 4, which served as a warning from God to the king of pride and humility. Daniel is summoned by Nebuchadnezzar. Sun browsers are when he becomes king, and Daniel is asked to interpret an event that sees a floating hand write a message on the wall. Dino successfully interprets this as a warning that the king will find his demise soon enough as a result of his lack of humility and the fact that he has not honored God. Daniel continues to have visions over the next few chapters, but it isn't until chapter 8 where he sees a go to kill a ram and sees the goat's horns extend up to the high heavens. The Daniel notes of the ram that out of one of them came another horn, which started small but grew in power to the south and to the east, and toward the beautiful land it grew until it reached the hosts of the heavens, and it threw some of the starry hosts down to the earth and trampled on them. It set itself up to be as great as the commander of the army of the Lord. It took away the daily sacrifice from the Lord, and his sanctuary was thrown down because of rebellion, that all's people and the daily sacrifice were given over to it. It prospered in everything it did, and truth was thrown to the ground. It becomes one of the only times that Daniel has difficulty interpreting the vision, as God does not appear to deliver him any wisdom or insight here instead. Daniel is approached by another entity, where in 8:15 through 17 he states, "While I, Daniel, was watching the vision, and tried to understand it there before we stood one who looks like a man, and I heard a man's voice from the you like, calling Gabriel tell this man the meaning of the vision," Daniel explains. That he was terrified of Gabriel. As the angel approached him, he does not tell us here what the angel looked like, but given his terror, some suggest that Gabriel is a face of entity, or simply that Daniel cannot process the magnificence of the angel, and therefore responds with fear. Daniel states that he fell to the floor with his face on the ground in the wake of the angel, but that Gabriel raised him up so that he might explain to him the vision of the goat and the ram. In 8:23 through 26, Gabriel tells Daniel in the latter part of their reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a face-looking king, a master of intrigue will arise. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation and will succeed in whatever he does. He would destroy those who are mighty, the holy people he will cause the sea to frost. And he will consider himself superior when they feel secure. He would destroy many and take his stand against the Prince of Princes, yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. Division of the evenings and mornings. That has been given you as true, but seal up the vision before it concerns the distant future. Daniel tells us at the end of the chapter that he lay exhausted for several days after Gabriel's visit, and that he was appalled by the vision, for it was beyond his understanding. It shows us the magnitude of Gabriel's presence, that by merely speaking with Daniel, he needs him incapacitated for several days, and his impact on Daniel's life is so strong that the prophet is a guest as to what he has seen in chapter 9. Daniel tells us, having read the scriptures, he had the stance that desolation will come to Jerusalem for 70 years. He proceeds to conduct a lengthy, heartfelt prayer to show mercy upon them all, and while they have sinned and shame they recognize the error of their ways, he begs God not to strike at them with his anger, not to destroy the city which bears his holy name, but to shower them with his forgiveness. In 9:20 through 23, Gabriel returns as Daniel tells us, "While I was speaking and praying, confessing my sin and the sin of my people, and making requests to the Lord my God for his holy hill, while I was still in prayer, Gabriel, the man I had seen in the earlier vision, came to me in swift flight about the time of the evening sacrifice. He instructed me and said to me, Daniel, I have now come to give you insight and understanding as soon as you began to pray. A word went out which I have come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed. Therefore consider the word and understand the vision." Gabriel goes on to explain to Daniel about these 70 years and gives him details about the end times and the suffering that will be caused in between, all which lead to a virtuous eventualities. In chapter 10, Daniel prays to God in hope that his prayers will bring some stability to the turmoil in Israel, whereby he hopes to confess all of the sins of its people once again. Daniel's prayer is met with another otherworldly entity, one who makes himself known as a man dressed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Upas. Around his waist, his body was like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude. While this man is never explicitly identified, it is understood that this being is not mortal man. He is of a supernatural composition, his presence in Daniel 10:10 through 20 sees this entity explain to Daniel what will happen to his people, what lies in Israel's fate in the times coming. What's most interesting about these passages is that the entity, powerful as he appears to be, claims that he has been resisted by the prince of Persia and that this had delayed him in reaching Daniel. In Daniel 10:13, he states that the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me for 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came. To help me, Michael, being another of the chief archangels, is not detailed beyond this, but we can gather that this man in question is reinforced by Michael, and thus on the side of God, some have speculated, though, that this man is actually Archangel Gabriel, but many dispute this idea given that this figure is never addressed as Gabriel in this chapter, having already been acquainted with Gabriel. Daniel would have surely recognized the being, and given how much of an impression the angel had left on him, it would not be a face he will likely forgotten. So if this man was actually Gabriel, then Daniel should have recognized him instead of being overcome by this year, all of him, where he was noted as trembling on hands and knees. Of course, this is reminiscent of the fear that Daniel describes having seen Gabriel for the first time. It could be, as some have suggested, that Gabriel had only showed himself to Daniel in a lesser form, and when he appears to him again in chapter 10, he comes as his true self, hence why Daniel only chooses now to describe the angel's appearance, and hence why his fear is still evident, perhaps even more so in the book of Ezekiel. Their thirst, I believe, Gabriel appears in chapter 9, and he's referred to as the man in linen who is tasked by God to go through the land of Israel and mark upon the foreheads of those who will be spared from his judgment. Throughout the book of Ezekiel, God promises to bring upon destruction upon Jerusalem, for he deems the people there as sinners, adulterers, and those that worship false idols and neglect his name. But it isn't until chapter 9 that his plan is actually put into motion, where in Ezekiel 1 through 2, Ezekiel tells us, "Then I heard him call out in a loud voice, bring near those who are appointed to execute judgment on the city, eat with a weapon in his hand. And I saw 6 men coming from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with a deadly weapon in his hand. With them was a man clothed in linen who had a writing kit at his side." In Ezekiel 3 through 4, Ezekiel continues telling us, "And he said to him, go throughout the city of Jerusalem and put a mark on foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it. The 6 men who are present are told to follow this man in linen, and to kill without showing pity or compassion. Slaughter the old men, the young men, and the women, the mothers and children, but do not touch anyone who has the mark." By Ezekiel 9:11, the man in linen reports that he has done as the Lord has commanded, implying that those who were marked was spared, was those who were not were butchered by the 6 men that God had sent. Of course, this man in linen could have been anyone, mortal or otherwise. However, the repeated description of him being the man in linen has led many to link this with the entity who approaches Daniel in 10:5 through 6, who is described as a man dressed in linen by this Samsa Gabriel as a key facilitator of the destruction of Israel, for he is the one who mocks the Israelites in effect, deciding which ones live and which ones die. Of course, it is entirely possible that God had already decreed which ones were to be marked, and that this man in linen, or Gabriel, is simply following God's instructions by this. There exists some controversy as to Gabriel's role as far as Israel is concerned. While it is alluded here that he destroys or helps destroy Israel, he's also seen as a protector of Israel. One might say that what he may have the people's best interest at heart, his protection is only available as long as God decrees it. It shows that while the archangels may be figures of defense and safety, they serve God first and foremost, and will not hesitate to vanquish that which they have been commanded to. Gabriel appears 2 more times in the Bible, both accounts taking place in the book of Luke, where he predicts the birth of John the Baptist and Jesus Christ. In chapter 1 of the Gospel of Luke, the priest Zachariah is introduced, as well as his wife Elizabeth. It is quickly established that they are both righteous people, but they were unable to have children, as Elizabeth was unable to conceive, and that the couple were both very old. One day Zachariah went to the temple of God, and burned incest as was. Custom of the priesthood, but during his time an angel appeared to him, Zechariah, was startled by the angel, and much like Daniel is described as being gripped with fear. The angel tells him in Luke 1:13 through 14, do not be afraid. Zechariah, your prayer has been heard. Your wife, Elizabeth, will bear you a son, and you ought to call him John. He will be a joy and a delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He is never to take wine or other fermented drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before he is born. He will bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go on before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the parents to their children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Sakura, I could hardly believe what he was hearing, and he will lead him to question the angel, asking him how he could be sure of such a thing. After all, he and his wife were old now and far beyond the years of conceiving a child, the angel tells him. Though in 1:19 through 20, I am Gabriel, a first stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to tell you this good news, and now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at the appointed time. In this same chapter, we are shown that Gabriel isn't Nazareth and descends upon the Virgin Mary. Upon seeing him, Mary is described as being greatly troubled by his presence. O Gabriel tells her, do not be afraid, Mary, you have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and what's called him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end. Like Zechariah, Mary cannot believe what she is hearing. She asks how this can be, given as she is a virgin, to which Gabriel replies, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you, so the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she who was said to be unable to conceive is in her 6th month, for no word from God will ever fail. By the accounts in the book of Luke, we understand that Gabriel takes on a similar role as he does with Daniel. He seeks to aid those he is speaking with, giving him wisdom and insight, or in the case of Zechariah and Mary, gives them prophecy and essentially tells them that they are the precursors for something great. You might say that Gabriel's were all in the Bible is that of a messenger for God. Even if you believe that the man in linen in the book of Ezekiel is Gabriel, he still technically takes form as a messenger. He's not directly involved in the bloodshed in Jerusalem, but merely marks of those who should be killed again, essentially delivering what you might say is a message. Gabriel's appearance is another interesting footnote to discuss, given that many of the characters in the Bible are shocked to see him. You might say that this is the simple shock of seeing an angel at all, and that anyone who laid eyes on something so magnificent was surely react in similar ways. But what's striking is the underlining insidiousness of Gabriel's appearance. Daniel tells us that he was appalled by Gabriel, or at least by the visions he was shown. Now the experience with the angel had left him physically fatigued and exhausted. He later tells us that the unidentified man he meets in chapter 10. At some believers, Gabriel has him trembling on hands and knees, furthermore, implying that the figure before him is terrifying. Zechariah echoes this as well as he tells us that after seeing Gabriel, he was gripped with fear. Meanwhile, the Virgin Mary tells us that she was greatly troubled. Some believe that because of these reactions, Gabriel is actually not the angelic and pristine being based normally depicted in art, but instead something far more gruesome. Others speculate that Gabriel's appearance is simply too incredible to comprehend, and so the natural response to seeing something so great is to fear it. At least at first notice Gabriel is quick to tell everyone as he approaches, not to be afraid, and furthermore, reassures them with his prophecies. Except maybe with Zechariah, who, though, is given a true prophecy and blessed, with a son does have his voice taken, away by Gabriel for a short time for not believing him in the first place. Meanwhile, in the book of Enoch and his ancient Jewish apocalyptic religious text that follows the adventures of Noah's great-grandfather, we are told about the Watchers, the group of angels who were tasked with the watching over mankind. However, these angels became infatuated with the mortal women, and having been prohibited from getting involved in earthly affairs, proceeded to fornicate with these women, creating offspring known as the Nephilim, which in the book of Enoch are described as destructive giants that wreaked havoc on earth. Soon caught the attention of the archangels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Soya, and Uriel. They then reported the waters to God in chapter 9 of the story, saying, "They have gone together to the daughters of men, have lain with them, have become polluted, and had discovered crimes to them. The women likewise have brought forth giants. Thus has the whole earth been filled with blood and iniquity. And now behold, the souls of those who are dead cry out and complain, even to the gate of heaven their groaning ascends, nor can they escape the unrighteousness which is committed on earth. You know all things before they exist. You know these things and what has been done by them. Yet you do not speak to us. What on account of these things ought we to do to them?" In chapter 10, God gives his archangels a range of tasks to bring justice to the Watchers, but also to destroy the Nephilim, which have been created. It is Archangel Gabriel who is given this task, for it is written to Gabriel also. The Lord said, "Go to the bastards, to the reprobates, to the children of fornication, destroy the children of fornication, the offspring of the Watchers from among men, bring them forth, and excite them one against another, let them perish by mutual slaughter. For length of days shall not be theirs, as we can see." Unlike the Bible, Gabriel is given a much bloodier role. He's no longer a messenger, but a direct instrument of God's fury. However, his destruction upon the Nephilim also comes with a certain method. He is advised by God to excite the Nephilim against one another, leading me to think that Gabriel used some power over the Nephilim that got them to brutalize one another. It might be that through this Gabriel refrained from the bloodshed entirely, or at least maintained his image as a messenger, as he tells the Nephilim to destroy other, thus vindicating himself from getting his hands dirty in Jewish Kabbalistic texts. Gabriel is identified as being an archangel. There exists a tree of life in Judaism which sees God himself sent forth his energy through the universe. This energy can embody itself within angels or human beings. 10 attributes, known as a sephirot, are said to represent a particular type of energy, and that each of these energies are overseen by the archangels. The idea is that by concentrating on these energies, it can bring one closer to God. Archangel Gabriel represents the E-sword, otherwise known as the foundation, as a being who brings upon wisdom and revelations to the people he represents. The attribute of communication within this tree, this sees Gabriel serve as a conduit between man and God as he seeks to connect the two parties. We also understand from biblical accounts that in the Garden of Eden there exists a tree of life. In some Jewish tales, Gabriel reaches into the tree of life, which is brimming with new souls, and pulls one out. The angel Lila then watches over the soul, which forms into an embryo, and waits with it until it is born onto the world. Independent church groups such as their Latter-day Saints or Mormons believe that Noah is actually a form of Gabriel. We are told in Mormon teachings the prophet Joseph Smith taught that Noah is the angel Gabriel Nettie stands next to Adam in holding the keys of salvation. Meanwhile, in Islam, Gabriel, or Jabril, as it is pronounced in Arabic, has a much more prominent role in it. He is said to be the one who brings the teachings of the Quran from God to the prophet Muhammad. It's understood that the angel Gabriel would show his presence to the prophet Muhammad with only his voice. Let He did appear to him as a man, on this occasion as he taught the words of God. In the Hadith of Gabriel, one of the many records of words and actions of the Prophet Muhammad, we are told that Gabriel approached Muhammad as a man whose clothes were extremely white and whose hair was extremely black. He then quizzed Muhammad about Islam too, which Muhammad answers correctly to each. Question: unlike other encounters with Gabriel, the Prophet Muhammad does not demonstrate signs of fear or signs of being stricken by the angel's appearance, perhaps because the angel communicated with him mainly by voice. However, it's understood that the prophet was the only one to ever lay eyes upon the angel in his true form. Then he described him as having 600 wings that covered the sky from the earth to the horizon. Today, there are those that believe that Archangel Gabriel is amongst us on earth, and his role as a divine messenger has not changed over time. There are those that believe that Archangel Gabriel delivers on to their messages and guidance through non-corporeal means and provides clarity during difficult or stressful circumstances. Others believe that Archangel Gabriel provides the stimulus for which creativity flows, allowing believers to achieve new levels of inspiration and ingenuity. Others believe that trumpets are hearing trump is a signer. Archangel Gabriel is amongst them, for the trumpets are symbolic of Archangel Gabriel ability to broadcast the message of God. But I'm sure that's a whole range of signs of Archangel Gabriel that many different people of different faiths believe in. So do let me know yours in the comments below, whether you believe in the Archangel Gabriel as a divine messenger or as the entity who brought upon destruction in Israel. Do let me know your thoughts. Also, do let me know what sort of figures you'd like to see covered next. As always, if you've enjoyed today's video, then don't forget to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel